Welcome into the Minnesota Football Party. Melancholy circumstances today. We talk about the life of Khyree Jackson, dead at the age of 24 in a tragedy on Saturday. Not much of a party today, but it is the Minnesota Football Party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with Arif Hassan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talks Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Welcome in a brand new week on Locked On Sports Minnesota. It is the Minnesota Football Party, and a full panel today. Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman on X, Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL, Arif Hassan, Wide Left Substack at Arif Hassan NFL. You can find us on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. Hear us, Locked On Vikings podcast feed, where Luke Braun produces great Vikings content all week long. And I'm Sam Ekstrom at Sam Ekstrom on X. Today we talk about Khyree Jackson and unexpected news that dropped very early Saturday. Khyree Jackson killed in a car accident at the age of 24. The rookie cornerback, 4th-round pick for the Minnesota Vikings, gone way, way too young. We will discuss his life. And, this show also will act in part as a diversion from the difficulties of life and the tragedies. We will talk about some more lighthearted things a little later in the show, but we'll begin with Khyree Jackson after we remind you that this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You can make every moment more. Head to FanDuel.com/lockedon, where all customers get a boost or a bonus daily this summer. Something for everybody at FanDuel.com. Again, make every moment more. So Saturday morning, we got the news, the report at 3:14 a.m. in Maryland. Khyree Jackson, Isaiah Hazel, Anthony Litton Jr. Killed in a car accident with a car that was moving at a high rate of speed, attempting to pass, forcing them off the road. Suspected that alcohol did play a role in this event. Terrible. The heartbreaking news. If you've read the stories, you've read the statements from ownership, from Kevin O'Connell, from Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, obviously crushed at a young player who had a ton of life left to live, had a ton of football left to play. And it's again, another one of those jarring preseason tragedies. Unfortunately, we've had a few of these, Tony Sperano a few years back. You look back on this and you say, you're grateful that Jordan Addison wasn't in this position last year with what happened with him. But Khyree Jackson gone at the age of 24. I mean, Luke Inman, tough to digest, tough to stomach. That news that we got on Saturday.
Oh, just so heartbreaking, man. I mean, we've talked about Khyree Jackson as like the football player since he got here, but this is that cold slap back to reality. All these guys are human beings, all real people with real families, some of them with children of their own, unfortunately. There's just nothing more heartbreaking than watching a family go through the loss of a loved one, I think. And again, like you mentioned, to make matters worse, this isn't a story about one tragedy. It's a story about 3 tragedies, right? 3 different lives lost there the other night. And now these 3 families are going to be hurting, obviously, for a really long time. So, yeah, man, just a really tough pill to swallow. Just thinking about how these guys were here one day, gone the next. Just incredibly sad to hear.
Yeah, Luke Braun.
Yeah, I on Saturday I did a kind of a special episode of Locked On Vikings that people can listen to, where I kind of told the story that has been told, but I told his story as I know it, and kind of the celebration of who a guy is. I don't know. It seems like somebody that everybody really liked a lot. Like even going to like Alabama teammates and Oregon teammates, everybody talked about him. like just a guy that was really fun to be around and play with. So, now the team grieves together, and as fans, you grieve a little bit too, even if you didn't know the guy personally.
Yeah. Arif?
Yeah, one of the things that, after reading the news that I did is I actually read Alec Lewis's profile on Khyree Jackson, and I think it kind of reveals a lot of what Braun was talking about, like a lot of details about, what he went through to get to where he is now. A lot of unique and kind of character defining struggles that stick out. And it's a tough read knowing now what we know, obviously, but it is kind of heartening to hear all of the ways that he impacted the people around him positively, which it's kind of tough to do when you're a young person to have that big of an impact. So, he can be proud of that. His family can be proud of that. But just kind of just reading, like, going through and working at a deli counter, becoming employee of the month, while he's, trying to reboot his career. Really, really tragic stuff, but also, I think Lewis did a really excellent job, profiling the guy, without knowing the gravity with which we would read that kind of stuff later. So, I encourage people to check that out. Obviously, check out, Luke Braun's episode for a lot more details, about, what we know about who Khyree Jackson was as a person.
Yeah, and I think the Star Tribune also did a really good job. Not necessarily the column that was written that a lot of people have criticized, but the actual feature about his life had his voice in it, went into his background, and it is a very remarkable path to where he got to. Academically ineligible when he got out of high school, did not want to play D2, worked at Six Flags, Chipotle, and Harris Teeter, then went to Arizona Western Community College, moved from there to Fort Scott Community College, moved from there to East Mississippi Community College. COVID hit, so he never ended up playing there, I don't believe. Then did get noticed enough to latch on with Alabama. Nick Saban, can't get much bigger than that. Benched at Alabama, transferred from Alabama, and then reinvented himself in the Pac-12 with Oregon, where he ended up. And this is it, and it's all of that struggle is really what defined his story, that he had to work so hard. He had that many pit stops to get to where he was. He learned a ton along the way. And I think it also exemplifies a lot of people, and we've probably done it on this show too, like, you rip the transfer portal for what it's doing to college football, but it does offer these really cool opportunities for guys to reinvent themselves later in their careers, which is really exactly what Khyree Jackson did. And it's one of those stories that you root for. It's a guy that you root for, and it's jarring. You talk about Alec Lewis. We were going to talk about some of the preseason storylines that he wrote about today. One of them was Khyree Jackson. Like number 7 on the list, Khyree Jackson. Is he going to crack the cornerback room? Like that's the minutia we were talking about him with one day. Jordan Addison was talking him up in a podcast or radio interview, saying Khyree Jackson, this is the guy to watch. And suddenly that is so unimportant. That's just over. So abruptly.
I do want to add that you mentioned reinventing himself at Oregon. Oregon football did tweet out a really wonderful video. Has like a lot of interview clips from him, a little bit of gameplay, but just like a nice memorial video that I think is still pinned, but it was over at their Twitter account. I definitely recommend people checking it out just to get a sense of his personality.
Yeah, Matthew Collar wrote a good story the day after this, and he said that Khyree Jackson had one of the best post-draft press conferences that he's ever heard. And it's pretty tough for guys to stand out in those situations. They're often shy. They're often overwhelmed. They're not really media trained at that point. Khyree Jackson totally stood out as someone that had the charisma to kind of handle the spotlight. Just absolute tragedy. The fact that alcohol was potentially involved with the driver of the vehicle. Really terrible stuff. And, the Vikings will gather in 3 weeks or so for training camp, and they'll move forward, but this will weigh heavily on a lot of people. I think there will probably, and I don't know this for sure, probably be some sort of decal on the helmets. I would think some sort of tribute to him all season long. But you really, really hate to see this stuff. So anyone else can add anything on Khyree Jackson? And we will move on eventually and talk about other football items on today's show. But any last words on Khyree?
I don't have much to add. I mean, unfortunately, as access has become a little bit more restricted for a lot of us, we haven't been able to get to know a lot of these players, which makes it pretty difficult for us to talk from personal experience. We have to relate, based off of, the things that other people kind of tell us. But it is kind of revealing that all of the stuff that you read about Khyree Jackson before we had learned about any of this news was overwhelmingly like positive and uplifting, which is like, it's not varnished by, a desire to kind of hold back because of, what had happened. It's just, that's what people had learned about him. And I think that means a lot.
And I know we're talking a lot about Khyree, obviously, but all three of these guys were standout football players in high school together, correct? Like they were all three.
They were teammates, yeah.
Standout, in high school together. All three played at the D1 level for that matter as well. But like you guys mentioned, Khyree specifically, his story was the one that sort of gained a lot of traction, very unique circumstances, like you guys mentioned. Everyone was rooting for him with that background. He really just had that, again, just unique path that he had to take to get here. And it really did feel like from everything that we had gathered and heard, all the information, he was still scratching the surface of just how big of an impact he was going to make, not just on the field, obviously, but off the field as well. We heard it from coaches, teammates, family, just that infectious personality he had. Just one of those guys who always showed up with a smile on his face and just tried to make everyone around him have that same smile on their face as well, trying to make everybody laugh. So, yeah, I guess just parting thoughts, again, just goes without saying. Thoughts, condolences go out to all three families. There's just not a lot of things more tragic than hearing someone lose their life at such a young age. So super brutal story, man. I was just in utter shock when I read that news Saturday morning. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I when you get an email that says statement from, like, usually it's from Jeff Anderson, who's one of the top, their key communications figures. When you get an email from Jeff Anderson at 9:00 in the morning on a Saturday, it's not going to be good news. And you open it up and you read the details, and I was just floored. Hadn't been on Twitter, hadn't seen any of the reports, just saw that from the Vikings, and was just, had to take a beat to kind of cope with that. But also as a parent, you guys don't have kids, but you can imagine I'm already stressed about my kids being behind the wheel or being a passenger in an accident. Like it would be so horrible as a parent, literally a worst nightmare situation. And fortunately for my kids, driving is like 10 years away. Maybe no one will drive at that point. Maybe it'll all be, robot cars. I don't know. Maybe that'll make it safer.
Mad Max style wagons, battle wagons.
Yeah.
With the guitar guy at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if the robot cars, even if they're imperfect, if they can prevent drunk people from getting behind the wheel, I mean, I'm for it. Like that's just that's inexcusable behavior if that was the case here.
I think, Sam, I think, you speak for everyone when we say we're all just sick and tired of hearing about innocent people losing their lives because of anything to do with drinking and driving. Obviously, it's just become way too much of a common occurrence at this point. That it feels like you're right. Something probably needs to change. And obviously, that's a whole nother story for a different day. But yeah, it's just when innocent people lose their lives because of the same thing over and over. It's just a really tough pill to swallow. It becomes maddening after a while, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
Get an Uber.
Get an Uber.
Get an Uber.
Yep.
You're not good at it. I've heard people say that. Oh, I'm good. No, you're not.
No, you're not.
Maybe in that intoxicated state of mind, but not for real.
Yep.
All right, we are going to have a word from our partners, and we are going to talk a little bit of football. We'll get into that Alec Lewis piece and the training camp storylines coming up next on the Minnesota Football Party. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. We all love sports. We never want them to stop. Right now, they're a little slower, but we got baseball. We got WNBA, Olympics coming up. FanDuel lets the sports keep sportsing. And if you are not just a new customer, but a customer, any customer, you can get a boost or a bonus daily at FanDuel. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Head to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. The Twins are playing great baseball right now. You want to get in on some of their money lines? Head to FanDuel. The Lynx are one of the best in the league. You want to bet their spread, their money line? Check it out. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get a boost, get a bonus. Make every moment more. FanDuel.com/lockedon. It's FanDuel. All right, we get into the Alec Lewis training camp storylines piece. And as mentioned, jarring to see Khyree Jackson's name as one of the 10 questions to consider ahead of training camp. We'll get into those other 9 questions with quick answers. We'll try to get through them all. Starting with, will the Vikings spend their remaining cap space? $26 million in cap available in 2024. They can carry that over if they wish, or they could try to spend it on maybe some veteran, some cuts, some cap casualties. Will the Vikings use any of that money? Luke Braun.
So I wouldn't get your hopes up for like a guy that changes things dramatically. Like anybody who is that much of a game changer, seen as that much of a game changer, is going to be long gone off the market. Like anybody who costs more than $10 million is long gone off the market by now.
Well, that's not. You could always trade for Brandon Ayuk. There's always that possibility.
Wow. Okay, yeah. So there's trades, not free agents.
There's your wide receiver 3 solution right there.
There you go. Ooh. Yeah, wide receiver 3, Brandon Ayuk. Yeah.
Boy, you can afford it.
Yeah.
I don't know what draft picks you're sending, but but like I think what it really is going to go toward is there. I still kind of think we might look at a Cam Bynum extension. This would be the time to do it, and I think he deserves it. But otherwise, you can just roll a lot of it over, and it can help take a little bit of the sting out of the big Kirk Cousins dead cap hit. I wouldn't hold your like. This is the time of year where you get like Cam Akers type RB2s, not guys that like solve a major problem. Oh, our cornerbacks are, I don't believe in Shaq Griffin, but there's this cornerback we can go get for the $20 million that we have. That's not realistic. But I think, I don't know, some of that cap space goes internal, some of it rolls over. Maybe you end up with a Durante Jones type, pre-camp, hey, this guy's just out there, let's take a flyer and see if he can, like reclamation project type guys, N'Keal Harry type guys. That's the kind of free agents you see right now.
Yeah, there was a top 10 for the Vikings specifically. Granted, this was written on June 25th, so some of these guys may be gone. We've heard about the Hunter Renfrows, Adoree Jackson, J.C. Jackson, Russell Gage, Manuel Ogba, Jerry Jacobs, Tyus Powell. So to your point here, Luke, there's
it's a lot of overripe fruit.
Exactly. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, like Braun just said, it's like a lot of names that pretty easy to convince yourself are going to be game changers, but obviously they're on the market for a reason. And a lot of people with ties to Brian Flores who have run some similar stuff as like Brian Flores has run. So like J.C. Jackson, for example, is another name. Xavier Howard, another name, although I don't recall that Xavier Howard had like the most wonderful experience with Brian Flores, so maybe that's not as easy as a sell. But it wouldn't shock me if they went at corner, Stephon Gilmore, right? But yeah, with $26 million in cap space, there's like a strong possibility that they'll be pursuing kind of like one of those flyer veteran free agents that, again, a name that we might all be familiar with, but is probably not going to have the impact that we're used to seeing from that name, like a Michael Thomas, right, who hasn't produced in quite a while. So those are all options, right? People want to have a little bit more structure at wide receiver 3, have a little bit higher of a floor, which I don't know that you can actually get a high floor. You can perceptually get a high floor. You can get a Hunter Renfrow and convince yourself like, well, now you can't get worse than that, and that's pretty good. That's not necessarily the case, but there are players there that people will certainly be intrigued by. So there's that. Obviously, they're going to have to do something at some point at cornerback as well. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see a move there. But yeah, I think that most of that space is going to go into rollover. that's the great thing about this cap stuff, is that you don't have to spend all of it. It's not as if it's actually a waste to not spend that money. You get to use it next year, maybe absorb some of the contracts as they expand, or a signing bonus or something like that. Well, not a signing bonus, but like, you get it. That you can, maybe a 1-year contract next year that you can test like another different free agent out in the flyer.
And who knows, a healthy chunk of this money could end up going to, if they do end up cutting Lewis Seen, maybe a perfect segue here, which we've talked about a lot on this show already, but I didn't realize there's $7 million in dead money if they do in fact cut him.
Yeah.
So that's a healthy chunk of money right there just to cut that guy.
Yeah, it expedites that 4th year. That is number 2. And by the way, to put a bow on number 1 here, this is the first time the Vikings have rolled over more than like $1 million in how long? I mean, Rick was up against the cap to like the dollar.
I think there's a reason for that, though, right? Like, what does this money do? It's doing nothing for you right now. It's just burning a hole in your pocket. Right? You're just waiting. Yeah. Like, imagine if the Vikings had committed some sort of rules violation and they said, all right, you got to take $27 million of this year's cap. You got to wait a year to spend it. Like, that's a punishment you would do. Like, you would not choose to have for any reason.
Well, a lot of keep in mind, though, a lot of that money just could not have been opened up when they needed it, seemingly. The Jefferson thing opened up a great deal. And just not knowing what your future was with Kirk, it was hard to do business, probably. I don't know. I give them a
it's a little generous. It's a little generous. They knew that they had the opportunity to use that money. You don't have to. Here's the thing about off-season spending. You don't actually have to be under the cap for a good chunk of the offseason. There are deadlines where you have to be under the cap, but you don't have to be under the cap every single moment of the offseason. And so if there's a timing issue, you can actually just get around that by either delaying a contract or, just not having to deal with it until the deadline. So I don't know how much of that matters. The thing I did enjoy about the way that Rick and Rob Brzezinski obviously managed the cap together is that they always kept a couple extra million heading into the year. Mm-hmm. So, like, you would say, hey, at the end of the year, they only had like $700,000. I remember one year they had $700,000 in cap space that they could roll over. Well, yeah, but they entered that year, I think, with like $5 million, and then they had to make a bunch of moves midway through the season as a result of injury, which obviously a good chunk of this $26 million, not like a ton of it, maybe $4 million, will be used, throughout the season to deal with, or maybe if there is like a deadline trade that they want to make, maybe Brandon Ayuk lasts all the way into week 8 or something like that. But yeah, I think a good chunk of this money will be used throughout the season to just kind of deal with emergencies as they crop up.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like if I was a GM or any GM in the league, in a perfect world, would have $4 to $6 million left going into the season for those injuries, which are inevitably going to happen for sure. So that makes
got to have money to sign Kai Forbath when they cut Will Reichard.
Exactly. There you go. You nailed it.
And justice will then be served.
Right. Comes full circle with Kai.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Number 2, will the Vikings look to trade safety Lewis Seen? Can Kwesi Adofo-Mensah trade with himself is my question. Because this, like a reclamation former first-round pick with 2 years left on his deal sounds exactly like the kind of guy Kwesi would want to attain. Is there a Kwesi clone that he could trade with? Because I don't think Lewis Seen's tradable.
I mean, it's you're Jesse Davising this. You're doing a 6-7 swap just to get the cap off the books.
It's the Cam
Luke, I don't know where you got that $7 million number, but because it's post June, he would cost. It would actually cost more still to cut him than to keep him on the cap. You'd be paying $2.2 million just to be rid of him. Mm-hmm. So there's no reason to do that, I think, outside unless you're getting some kind of draft compensation back. But it would be like a 6-7 swap. Just please take, please go give this guy a fresh start and get this off of our books, kind of thing. And then you would actually save like a small amount of cap. Mm-hmm. But it depends on how you want your DB room to look as well.
You could trade him
an additional safety 6, so he could still just be the 6th safety again if you want to keep 6 again.
So I don't remember who exactly is from the same draft class that hasn't worked out yet, but You could do. I mean, I think the Chiefs and the 49ers did this
people.
once. Right? Yeah, I would imagine. No, not from the Vikings. Other first round picks. Sam.
No, I'm talking the 2022 draft was like pretty rough.
Yeah. But I remember the Chiefs and the 49ers did this once where they swapped first round bust receivers. I think AJ Jenkins and Jonathan Baldwin. Yeah, Jonathan Baldwin.
Wow.
You could do that, right? Where you trade one first round bust for the other, and then the cap implications are essentially like you're both taking the same hit, right?
Right.
So, you could do that. So Kwesi could still get his reclamation project out of Lewis Cine.
Maybe the Bengals will
else,
trade us Daxton Hill because like he's not that good. So like that's
he's
even,
a
right?
great deal better.
I know, but they don't know that. Don't tell them that.
They don't know that.
Yeah, Houston Texans, Jalen Pitre from Baylor, maybe. I don't know.
What
you
if
guys
we
wanna
traded
just
the
make a
Lions for Jamison Williams?
Oh my God, that'd be so perfect.
Ooh,
Talk about
that's
full circle. That'd be
Safety
great.
6 for wide receiver 4. I'm just saying.
Right. Well, I will say this too. I mean, yeah, odds are you're right. This is a Jesse Davis, Cam Akers type of trade, but the Vikings feel like if you were to go team by team through everybody's safety room, the Vikings do have a surplus of riches at safety compared to some other teams, which I haven't gone team by team and looked at.
And that's what they'll tell other teams. No, he's not bad. We just have so many good safeties.
Right. Yeah, they'll try to sell them, but maybe I gotta assume there's a handful of teams out there that are pretty thin at safety that would maybe take a stab on him. And again, I'm not saying that you're getting anything more than a 6th-round pick at most.
Yeah.
But I got to feel like there's a suitor or two out there that probably had some good draft grades on him going into 2022.
Exactly.
That still say, okay, you know what? Maybe he hasn't got a fair shot, change of scenery type of situation. Let's swap a 6th and a 7th. Sure, why not?
I mean, Jalen Reagor trade, right? Like this is such a a thing that like Kwesi would do.
Ross Blacklock,
but yeah,
whatever.
like if your scouts still had a 1st-round grade on the guy, you haven't seen anything. If you're an AFC team, you're not paying attention to what's to this whole thing. You're not oversaturated like we are as we cover the Vikings. And you say, hey, maybe we can fit. You guys messed him up. Maybe we're just better at this than you. Which, considering the way that Lewis Cine's development has gone here, isn't that much of a stretch.
Yeah,
they really did not do well with him.
Yeah,
the fact
that up on 2 years from the gruesome injury as well. Maybe maybe the Vikings didn't really screw him up.
Change defensive schemes. They screwed him up big time. Like, maybe your defensive coaches will be smarter than Ed Donatel. That's not that crazy.
The asterisk on the injury, I think, does give that's enough to give you hope that a year further removed would be enough. And it's not as if he was on the field and showed you that he's bad, more like he got usurped in training camp, which is also bad, but maybe not bad enough for teams to say, oh, yeah, he's a lost cause. So number 3, I hadn't really thought much about this. Are the Vikings ready to move away from punter Ryan Wright, who regressed in 2023? Now, he insinuates in the story that Wright was at like the bottom in a lot of categories. I'm not seeing that. Maybe the bottom half of the league. He did regress, too many touchbacks, but he's also not at the bottom of the league. Inside the 20 punts, probably his worst stat. Do the Vikings move on from the hefty lefty punter?
So I thought I saw multiple stats or metrics that did have him in like the bottom 5. So maybe I saw those wrong then. Maybe
inside the 20, he was second worst. That one was bad.
Maybe it's just that then. Okay, all right.
Yep. Is he a lefty? Am I wrong about that?
I should be paying more attention to football. I should know the answer to that, but I don't think he is.
This is like the Office episode. Like, does Stanley have a mustache?
I don't think Seth Vernon is a serious enough acquisition for this to be a thing. Like, if they had gotten somebody with a lot of starting experience or something, I would say so. But undrafted rookie, has he made a team before?
No, I'm almost positive no. Yeah.
So why is it going to be different now?
Yeah.
I mean,
too, if you
Greg
if
Joseph
you move
suffered
on,
from a similar lack of team making before I think he made the Titans. Was it?
We should learn a lesson from that. You mean the bottom 5 kicker we had for 3 years? I don't think we should do that again.
The beloved Greg Joseph, yeah.
Yeah. Well, by some sides.
Yeah. But yeah, The thing, I don't know that Wright regressed as much as I think the outcome of a lot of Ryan Wright's punts were a lot worse this year. I think his actual punts were fairly similar to last year. So stuff that would have been downed inside the 20 wasn't downed.
Punt luck regression. We saw it. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of though. Like
I don't know that like he had a higher percentage of his punts returned, which or actually a lower percentage of his punts returned. Now that I'm looking at it, it's just that when they were returned for a little bit longer. That could just be a coverage issue. His average hang time didn't change all that much, certainly within variance. It's really just that touchback thing, and then a few kind of, I think people remember a few notably bad punts in their memory, but over the course of the season, as he's punting, it's just, I don't think there was a huge change, and I think that that's something that, from what I understand, Matt Daniels is fairly process-oriented when it comes to special teams, and he's going to be the one making the call here. It's not like a Mike Zimmer situation where Kevin O'Connell's just going to get so frustrated with the guy he's going to cut him 4 weeks into the season. So I probably not a remarkable competition here because I don't think that there was that significant of a drop-off from one year to the next with Ryan Wright, but yeah, worth monitoring.
You know, the Vikings have brought in the 3 years of the O'Connell era, they brought in like these scarecrows to sort of like be there on the field to compete with their punters and kickers most camps, and they often cut them extremely early.
Yeah.
So this feels like to me the same type of thing. I don't think that Ryan Wright was bad enough to say that, okay, after he was so brilliant in 22, that this is enough to ditch him after 23. That's just my view on it.
And I
think that's a good plan too. Like get it, bring in competition, give them something to, something to work at. I guess give them somebody to have to earn their job over. I think it's just a healthy thing to do in camps with specialists.
I was just gonna half joking say I haven't watched Seth Vernon tape, but I got to imagine Ryan Wright's got him in the fake punt pass department as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you move on from Ryan Wright. Are you going to be able to call those fake punt passes anymore? I don't know how confident KOC will be with that package anymore.
Those ruled. I will say that one of the guys that they did bring in one year, Riley Patterson, who had an abysmal, spring, like before training camp. He just had an abysmal showing before he got hurt, and then he couldn't compete. Yeah, he like missed a bunch of kicks, got hurt. I thought he was maybe playing it up a little bit so he wouldn't have to keep kicking. And then he finally got healthy again by the time I think a week or two into training camp. Got out competed, got cut, and then I believe since then he has outperformed Greg Joseph. Not saying a lot, and he hasn't played well, which is more a Greg Joseph indicator than anything. But the Vikings do sometimes pick wrong in these competitions.
Yeah.
Like even when it's like, hey man, Riley Patterson, not the top college kicker. I think it was Syracuse, right? Not the top college kicker. Memphis, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like another specialist.
That was 2021 when that happened, I think, too. That was Zimmer.
Yeah. So sometimes you bring in competition, you don't think much of it. Turns out that guy's also in the league.
We are going to milk this story for the next 3 episodes, I think, because that's what we do in July. So we've got 9 of these to work through. We've done 3
got
today.
4 football parties till camp comes.
I know. This will be perfect. We're going to do the next 3 on Thursday. Then we'll do more next Monday until we get through all of them. But I do want to leave time for today's Rank 'em segment, which we postponed so that Luke Braun could be a part of it because he'll be good at it because he's a Vikings historian. The next Vikings that are deserving of Ring of Honor induction next on the Minnesota Football Party. We are presented today by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, with all the parts you need at the prices you want. Easy to make your car the MVP, bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, welcome back. Minnesota Football Party. Part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And for your second listen today, go check out Locked On Vikings with Luke Braun. You won't regret that. To close today's show, it's our Minnesota Sports Rankum segment.
This is Minnesota Sports Rankum, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, and it starts now.
All right, the Rankum today. The next Vikings deserving of the Ring of Honor. I sent you guys the list of existing Ring of Honor inductees. Today we decide who's next. And Luke Braun's the historian. I'm going to give him the first crack at the next Ring of Honor inductee. Let's hear it.
Well, perhaps the easiest one will be Adrian Peterson when he eventually admits that he's retired.
Yes.
He's in the best shape of his life.
That could be a while, though.
Yeah, it'll be a while.
That could be a minute.
So I don't know if I don't think he counts then. I'm just gonna go straight up by AV. I'll go way old. How about the starting left tackle next to, or 2 spots away from Mick Tingelhoff for years and years and years. Vikings since day one of the Vikings. Since 1961. I think they took him from the Lions in the expansion draft, if I recall. Grady Alderman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Grady.
Yep, a lifer tackle. Not a lot of pomp and circumstance around the tackles, especially from that era. But that's a good one. Tim Irwin, also, I think, another kind of overlooked tackle in Vikings history. Mm-hmm. Alderman's good, though.
Yeah. Yeah, Dennis Ryan, equipment manager for 45 years.
Oh, yeah, that was Luke. That was last time. Yep.
Yeah. No, Grady Alderman was my pick. Obviously, I also looked at the list by approximate value and noticed him. But 6 Pro Bowls. I think that would be just a good pick, a good throwback. If you wanted
not
to
the
go,
highest by AV, that's not in the Ring of Honor, by the way.
I've got a different name.
There's one higher.
There's like a linebacker, right?
Anthony Carter.
Yeah, Roy Winston.
Yeah,
also a linebacker from those days that played for 14 years.
I wonder. So you probably know more about Roy Winston than I do. I wonder if that's just a product of how AV is calculated, which for a lot of defensive players is impacted by the performance of the defense around them and how many points and yards that they gave up.
Probably.
I don't think that Roy Winston earned that many postseason honors and is, from an AV perspective, riding the coattails of some pretty phenomenal defenses. So I didn't put him down because I didn't know enough about him.
There's a logjam at linebacker, I think.
That
Roy
too,
Winston,
yeah.
Ed McDaniel, Wally Hilgenberg, and Chad Greenway, I think, could all make a case, and it's hard to separate.
Yeah,
Greenway feels like a pretty easy one.
Yeah, I was going to say Hilgenberg and Greenway are pretty easy. There's only one tight end in there, Steve Jordan. You could put Kyle Rudolph in. I would feel a little weird putting Kyle Rudolph in ahead of somebody like Grady Alderman or ahead of Chad Greenway, but there's not a lot of great tight ends in Vikings history like there are for linebackers, defensive tackles, running backs, etc. So, and there's no it's not an all-star team. You don't need to fill every position, but something to consider, right? That Rudolph was around for a long time and had a pretty big impact. Yeah. So those are some names. Aside, a lot of the general managers make it. At some point, we'll be talking about Rick Spielman, but I think it'll be a while before we get to that point.
We got to let the dust settle for some people.
Yeah.
Come to grips with that. Let me throw one more name in the hat for you, Luke. Anthony Carter. I don't know where he would maybe rank or peg on the board somewhere in there, but would love to hear your 2 cents on just kind of all that. We've flung out a lot of names now for you, just kind of where you would maybe decipher one guy from the next.
And where would he stack up with a Thielen, say? And Thielen's not eligible yet, but I think Thielen will be certainly in that mix down the road.
Oh yeah,
because
Well,
of
that's
his,
like that's part of the way that Ring of Honor is determined, right? Like Thielen has such like a local like legend kind of presence, like his cultural
watch
value.
him come back and sign a
significance is
1-year
huge.
deal and retire here.
Right.
Watch that.
Oh, for sure.
Just for the cherry on top. Yeah.
So like that's gonna play a pretty big role in this, which I wonder. I just feel like you're probably more likely gonna get that kind of thing. Like I was just about to check. Yeah, Jim Kleinsasser might enter the Ring of Honor for like the same
Special K.
the same kind of reason, right? Which I mean,
And like nobody would
Kleinsasser
argue with that, yeah, because
Right,
it's not. This
Kleinsasser-
isn't a Hall of Fame argument, or this is
Right.
not like a.
This is our
This
party.
like
This is our
yeah. This is
circle.
not a statistical argument or like who won the most games or whatever. It is kind of a cultural thing.
yeah,
a
and
good word for
so
it.
yeah, like you said, like no one would argue with Kleinsasser. Plus, I mean, he was like very good. Right, like he was
Yeah.
extremely good. So I think Thielen might have a leg up on somebody like Anthony Carter, who Vikings fans love and remember, but like Thielen is like a legend in many ways, right? So I think
Scott
yeah,
Studwell
that-
on there yet?
Yeah, he is.
I think he is.
Okay.
Jim
Yeah.
Kleinsasser, also Hollywood A-list celebrity. He was on 51st
50
Dates
First
with Adam
Dates.
Sandler.
There you go.
So
Yeah,
How funny would it be to
Yeah.
put Brett Favre on here, just to spite the Packers, just to be mean?
Oh, that'd be good.
I did put him down on my list because it's funny.
Yeah.
I've got 3 names that haven't been mentioned yet. I think 2 of them are strong contenders. One of them is fringe. So number 1, this might be my number 1 guy, Bobby Bryant.
Yeah.
Bobby
Oh, I
Bryant.
like
That's a very
that.
good one.
Yeah.
Long time, lifer Viking, 13 seasons. He's second on the team interception list behind Kraus. He's got 51. Scored 3 times, 14 fumble recoveries. That's kind of on, who cares about those numbers? But he was part of all these great defenses. all
Always
these
did it in
Super
the
Bowl
playoffs
teams,
too.
multi-time
Like just
Pro
clutched
Bowler.
up every time. There is a kick return or a kick block touchdown that he recovers, and I want to say 74 against the Rams in a game that the Vikings kind of were not doing well in up until that point. Sparked the whole thing. Turned out to be a totally no drama win. It was beautiful.
I'm going to try to find that in his postseason game logs. 70 against the Rams, you said?
It was a playoff game against the Rams. I forget which year. I want to say 74, but that might be wrong.
Fumble.
Could be 73.
It was a punt return, you said?
No, a blocked field goal.
Was it against? Oh, yep. 24-13, Vikings win December 26th, 1976. He also had 2
76.
picks that day. 2 picks. Wow,
Yeah.
what a
That's
day
not
for
bad.
Bobby Bryant.
Not bad.
And very importantly, I think his second to last interception of his career was a crucial part of the miracle at the Met, the crazy Ahmad Rashad catch against the Browns. Bobby Bryant, an old Bobby Bryant, like old man hooping, made a crucial interception to enable that.
That's big time. Yeah, that was his final season.
Yeah.
Second name, Gary Larson. Round out the Purple People Eaters with Gary,
Love it.
who is not enshrined, but was a 10-year Viking from a defensive tackle position, had 37 sacks with Minnesota, and played in
That would count in my heart
135
as Roy
games.
Winston getting into, because Roy Winston got a whole bunch of tackles because of Gary Larson.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you say just package them together. It's
2
like
for
a
1.
whole
Yeah.
deal.
Very Shamar Stephen, Eric
Kevin
Hendricks
and
thing
Pat
going on that
Williams.
defense.
The Williams
Like
wall,
they
get
did
them
it the same way. It was like Gary Larson would like move people out of the way and kind of make gaps, and then the linebackers would go fill them.
And then my third one, up for debate. I think if you asked 100 people, I think the majority would probably say no. I think Peterson is certainly in first, but Robert Smith.
I would put him in, but yeah,
I had
I'd
him.
say
I had him on my honorable. Yeah.
put Peterson in
he's written
prior to
down
that.
here.
But yeah,
Do you think Matt Burke gets in now that he ran for lieutenant governor and became
man,
political?
that's tough. I'd probably wait another 15 years and hope he doesn't do anything new. And then everyone's gonna be like, "Yeah, I remember that guy. He went to Harvard, right?" Like, I think
Harvard,
Hey, remember that one weird time that he
Lost
ran
all the
for?
weight. Right?
yeah. Ah, what a kooky time that was for us all.
Yeah. We say over the campfire while eating canned beans.
Who's got the harmonica? Somebody's playing.
Are we done with nominees, or are there more?
Probably there are more, but I'm not well.
Probably a lot of people are forgetting. I don't know.
I think that there's also going to be a logjam from the 2010s decade at edge rush, because you've got Hunter.
Oh yeah, Griffin should definitely be part of this.
Griffin, Robinson, and Hunter are ending their Vikings careers with pretty similar stats. I think Griffin gets the nod though, just because of his, just sort of the cultural influence that he had on those teams.
Yeah, the Jim Marshall of the Zimmer era.
Yep.
Emotional backbone of the team.
Okay, I was like, he got more than like 10.5 sacks in a season, man. I wouldn't.
Yeah. Emotional backbone of the team, and premier edge rusher.
Yeah, Griffin makes a lot of sense. Oh, okay. So Burrito Bill in the chat says CJ Ham has got to make it when the time comes. Yeah, I'd probably put Kleinsasser in first, and obviously,
it would have to be like Kleinsasser style. And if we're putting in Kleinsassers, we should put in Kleinsasser.
How about a Marcus Sherrills nomination?
Ooh, feel good.
I like it. Luke Braun seems a little hesitant on that
it's a
one.
long shot.
I like it.
I'm not saying
a lot,
it's a favorite,
I think.
Yeah.
Chris Walsh.
We're going to run out of space in the stadium for the Ring of Honor names by the time we get to Marcus Sherrills.
Yeah.
Like the text is really small. You know?
All right.
What's that say? Yeah, see that? Kids, come here. I want to show you. That's who your old man used to be. I can't read it. What is
3 minutes left. I want a top three. Give me a top three. Yep. Top three.
Adrian Peterson, Jim Kleinsasser, and Gary Larson. No, we got to put Jimmy K in. Come on.
I still like Bobby.
So we are counting Adrian Peterson. That makes the first one easy. Yep. Grady Alderman, Everson Griffin.
Yeah, I got to put Bobby for me has got to be in my three.
Oh, yeah,
you talked me into Bobby. Yeah, AP. How about Greenway? I feel like Greenway's going to be in there sooner or later.
Yeah, Greenway is just one of those guys that he is going to remain. I think because of he's stayed part of the community. He's on the radio all the time. He runs a local business. Like, he's just such a part of the fabric now that it's going to be hard not to.
And again, in today's day and
make
age,
for a really easy halftime show.
To never play for another team, to be drafted by the same team, retire by the same team after a decade long, that just doesn't happen a lot. So.
How long are the halftime speeches for Ring of Honor inductees? Because if it's pretty long, I might get a mention.
You will get a mention. Yeah.
I was going to say, you have a conflict of interest on him.
Yes, you will. Yeah.
If it was Brian Robinson, 50 minutes.
We just extend, right.
Easy. Let me tell you the 19 ways that I exemplified Viking football in my time here. His retirement presser, one of the greatest of all time. He just let it rip.
I just chose not to go that day. I was like, I got too much stuff to do, and then I could not have made a better decision. I could not have been happier not going.
You'd still be there, still writing about it.
His opening address took over a half an hour before he took questions.
I'm going to throw this out there because there's not enough time for you all to argue with me, but Kirk Cousins probably gets in someday.
Probably. No, I'm not going to argue with that. I think he probably does.
He's in.
Yeah,
he'll be in.
He's in. I don't know about he's in, but probably.
He's in.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to wait for him to retire and stuff. But...
Play the outro, Sam. He's in.
Will he get booed is the question.
Probably not.
Hopefully he doesn't run for office. That'll help.
He will.
Yeah, well, it would be in Michigan. It's okay.
Yeah. Minnesota football party, Locked On Sports Minnesota. Earlier in the show, if you joined us live, we did talk at length about Khyree Jackson and the tragedy that occurred on Saturday. Condolences to his family, loved ones, and of all the three victims. Minnesota football party returns on Thursday. We'll talk to you then. See ya.